Hi again, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Scenes. Now, today we're all the way in Connecticut and we are speaking with Mrs. Shyma Andrews. And Shyma is the CEO of Optimal Healing Center, Connecticut. Shyma, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Corinne. Happy to be on the show today.
Wonderful,
Yes.
wonderful. And today we're just gonna get into, Shyma's business behind the scenes. Why she established this sort of business. Is it something that she has always wanted to do, and how is it going? How can she encourage other entrepreneurs, etc.? So we're gonna start. Shyma,
Yes.
now tell us, like I said before, we're all the way in Connecticut. I'm from Jamaica and you're also from?
Jamaica, Ireland, no problem.
Pick up Jamaica in other place.
Yes.
So Shyma, tell us about your journey. Tell us first why you started Optimal Healing and how it came about.
So, the journey has been kind of scenic, for lack of a better term. But I started Optimal Healing because I needed more for the community. I needed more than what the current healthcare system offered. The only way I was going to get that was to do my own thing.
Okay.
Because, in the grand scheme of things, when you work for other people, they set their own rules for their practice. It's revenue driven rather than patient care centered, which was one of the things I struggled with a lot because there were services offered that wasn't necessarily what the client needed.
Needed at the time.
So, the only way that I could think of revamping healthcare and prevention in the very truest sense of the word was how Optimal Healing Center was born, hence the name.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And when you say community, tell us what you mean by community.
I mean, there is a lot of disparities in healthcare. Brown and black are significantly affected. It is what it is. And so I wanted to bridge that gap in healthcare where more of the people, regardless of their socio-economic status, could be served. And their healthcare needs could be met. And we looked at all fronts that would bridge some of those disparities to get them the same level of care. So all my clients are VIP clients, regardless of their status. Correct.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
And so, thinking about healthcare, thinking about care in itself, we know that us in Jamaica, our motto is out of many, one people, and we're so accustomed to caring for each other that, looking at the disparity as you saw in your community would see where, you'd want to do something like that as a Jamaican. As a woman, how has it been?
In terms of caring for the population
And establishing your own business.
Challenging. A lot of roadblocks, right? Like, there's no manual. I wasn't taught this in my grad school program. I was taught to be a great provider. I was taught the recommendations for care, guidelines, all that stuff. But I mean, now I think they've gotten better where they've added that to the subsequent courses. But running a business, breaking into the mold was never part of it. That entrepreneurship was a thing. And so I think in terms of being a woman, there were a lot of no's. There were a lot of no's for me in the beginning, and I think if I had allowed those no's if I'd taken those no's, we would not be here today, right? So there was a lot of barriers, and those barriers were, well, both in funding. You were a new business, nobody really knows you. And just even relationships that you have with banks before, trying to get startup capital was never there. So and I think, of course, there are some people, being a woman, you're in business is another disadvantage of itself, right? Like, women are not paid simultaneously to their male counterparts. And then I'm a black woman as well, starting a business. So the odds weren't necessarily in my favor, right? But the vision was bigger than me.
Wonderful.
The vision was bigger than the nose. And so you start with the end in mind is one of my favorite sayings. Is that I knew where I wanted to end up. I knew what I had to do, and I was willing to do whatever it take legally, of course,
Yeah.
to get there.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we ended up.
Yeah, and we know that COVID has made it a little bit easier for businesses to be established, but there's still that element of breaking into a world that perceivingly it was, you go to school, get an education, and you work for someone else. So this whole issue of entrepreneurship, COVID has kind of propelled that.
Yes.
And then sort of equalized the opportunities for male and female. We are not where we want to be, but it's getting there. So I appreciate you sharing that, Shyma. Now what we want to find out. Shyma Andrews in Connecticut, United States of America. Tell us about your background, where you grew up, what you wanted to be, and how we got here.
Yeah. So I grew up in Kingston, Jamaica. It was just inner city, Jamaica.
Okay. Which inner city?
Toa
Big it up, man.
Toa Yeah, we're from Kingston, Toa Kingston 11 till dead. Yes. So I grew up. I went to high school in Jamaica.
Which high school?
I went to Holy Childhood.
Okay, wonderful.
And then I also spent a year in Warren Hall, which was like a private school. So I met a lot of other people there.
Where's Warren Hall?
So Warren Hall is off. It's at Hagley Park Road. If you're coming down from Half-a-Tree and going towards 3 Miles. So still within the community, right?
Yeah.
So that's my background. I grew up there, and then I migrated and I came here when I was gonna turn 19 that year. So it's a lot of culture in terms of like starting over. You never
Culture
forget
shock.
it's a culture shock.
Mhm.
Like nothing's the same. You're in a new place. You have to figure it out yourself. But growing up, I wanted to be a doctor.
Wow.
But reality was my family could not afford that, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to think about, well, what was I going to do that didn't require having to go to university without anybody to stand your loans,
Yeah, the guarantor. And stuff, yeah.
And so I ended up doing, when I did CXC, I did a little bit of sciences. That was my love. Then I did accounting. Don't ask me how I ended up in accounting, but me hate maths bad. So I that was more of like backup reality, not the passion, right?
Yeah.
And so out of high school, I ended up I worked for, I guess I got the #1 prize in business somehow, even though I hate maths.
Wow.
And I started working for this accounting firm in off Half-a-Tree Road with one of the alumni from Warren Hall High School at that time. And so I was like their secretary, like in their research department, and that's some of the background thing. And I worked there until I migrated.
Okay. So you actually started learning business. So you not only did accounts, but you were the secretary, so you knew what was coming in, what were some of the questions asked.
But it's so different in
etc.
Jamaica, I think, like a little bit, right? In terms of like, we would get like titles, go get the titles for certain clients and titles office. So, and then filing. So those general business concept I knew, but it was different. And then I was also a teenage mom. So I had my first baby, my only daughter, when I was 18. And so I had to get a job.
So that's
to figure it out.
To Warren Hall?
So yeah, so
I love this story.
I
didn't know that.
Yes. So I had to figure it out, right? Because there's a little baby relying on me now, and I had to make do with what I could, but I didn't have the option of sitting down. So I know when I migrated to the United States, it was me and my daughter, and I said everything I was gonna do was gonna be for her. At the time, I didn't have any other kids yet. But I was driven, and I had a reason, right? I had a why, which was to take care of my daughter and give her the best life, regardless the fact that, I was a teenage mom. So
wonderful. So you came here. Describe how it was for you, maybe in that first year, trying to get around, trying to figure out how was it.
A little traumatic.
Wow.
A little traumatic.
Yeah.
The situation wasn't ideal without going into too much details, right? But the long and short of it is I I had to go on my own shortly after I came, maybe a year or so after.
Yeah.
And then I had my little sister with me that we took care of each other, that kind of stuff, and my daughter was here as well. And then I know I had to do something more than what I was working. I got a job in a cell phone store.
Wow.
And I was making $200 a week. And I worked 6 days a week from 9 to 5. And I said, well, this money can't stretch that far. By the time I pay the rent due, the next one due again.
Just to pay the bills, basically.
Right. So I went to BMCC Community College after that. And I did my prereqs there. And
what did you study?
Nursing. So nursing was actually introduced to me by one of my psychology professors.
Okay.
And Bill Rohn, I never forgot his name. And he was like, you know what? You should go to private school because you'll be done much quicker rather than waiting. Because somebody with a 3.8 GPA, we don't have enough seats.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that story started. So I did the prereqs, and then I went to private school for 2 years, and I did my associates in nursing, and that was a whole nother stress. And then, during that time, I met my husband, and we had another baby.
Okay.
Towards the end of nursing school, and then I loved OB, so I got into obstetrics in the hospital, and I worked, and I went back and got the bachelor's, and so that's part of that story. How we end up here is a different story. I wanted a little bit more.
As usual, coming from Tower Hill, wanting more, earning $200.
Like, why stop there?
Wanting more.
Why stop there?
Nursing, associate, wanting more, bachelor's, wanting more. All right, tell us from that wanting.
So then I got this crazy idea that maybe I should go back to grad school and get the master's, right? Because I was like, well, my credits are gonna expire. So do I want to go back through anatomy and physiology all over again? I remember the trauma of doing that through summer school. Like, I had no summer. I went to school Monday to Friday from 5 p.m. after work to 9 p.m. at night. And I said, I'm not going to let them expire. Let me go to grad school and go to the next level. And that's how I ended up doing that program for 3 years. And I went to Sacred Heart here in Connecticut. And we one of 3 minorities at the time.
You mean students?
Students in a class of 30. I think there was 3 of us. But it was a interesting experience, to say the least, but empowering one nonetheless.
Yeah.
And that's how, we graduated in 2017. Okay. So that was 6 years.
Congrats.
Yeah.
How was the support on that journey? Because you said married.
Yeah.
You had like
2 more babies.
2 more babies.
Yes, and I had 3
children,
kids.
A husband, going to school. How was that
Working full time.
Working full time. How was that?
Stress. Pressure.
But you seem to like the stress though, Shyma.
I think I thrive a little bit.
Yeah. Under pressure.
Yeah.
Because you're made for pressure.
Seemed that way. Soup, pressure. But I couldn't do it alone.
Yeah.
That type of journey was not one that could be done alone. Like, shout out to Auntie Carr.
Big up Auntie Carr.
Yes, I had to have help.
Yeah.
And so Auntie would, take care of the house, take care of the kids. I would get to go to work, come back. Wow. Hubby would run around and do any other things that needed to get done because I would work, go to clinicals. Sometimes I would probably then go to study groups, library close on us. So you're talking about an average of 4 hours sleep. Wow. I remember one time I took the kids to the movies, trying to catch up on some time. And I think the movie watched me. But they enjoyed the movie. That was all I called. I couldn't tell you how the movie go, but
that was family time.
That was family time. So it definitely, the support system was important. Yeah. Because, while it wasn't for the week, because I had to do so many different things and make the sacrifice for that time frame, having the help was really, really important, and it was critical to the success. Yeah. One
of the things I'm seeing though in your story, Shyma, is that because you put out the effort, it's like it was easier for persons to come alongside and support, because they weren't thinking that they were doing something in vain. They saw the evidence of,
Right.
their support and stuff. So
Right.
I'm seeing that on your journey.
Yeah, and like as I said before, like I always say, start with the end in mind.
Yeah.
When you start with the end in mind, even when the curve balls come,
Yeah.
you kind of still have
Mm-hmm.
you still have something that you're working towards, right? You still have that long-term vision
Yeah,
where
the
you're
vision.
looking to say, well, you know what, I'm not in the ideal situation, but I'm definitely not quitting.
Yeah.
I can fall down and chip up my knee, but I'm not gonna quit,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what drove me. So even while I was, as a new nurse practitioner, I was learning the ropes and getting my experiences. And I've worked in infectious diseases, I've done sexual health, I've done phys med, I've done integrative medicine. I fell in love with integrative medicine, and I was like, well, this is what I want to be able to practice. I want to be able to take all the natural stuff and incorporate it with conventional to improve people's outcomes.
And I know those like bush tea days, right?
Bush tea days, but our old people was not too far off.
That's true.
Right, with some of it. So there's a place for all of it, right? And so when I got to the point where I was like, all right, I think I have to do, I think it's time for me to step out now and do something. Was I scared? Absolutely.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
But I remember my coach said to me one night, I was doing like the weekends and off hours, after work hours, I would start to build my little clientele now.
And that's a business coach that you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
And she said to me, it's time to give a day in the week to your clients.
Wow.
She said, I know you feel like you're not ready, but they need a day in the week, not just after hours and on the weekend.
Not just side hustle hours.
Side hustle hours. So it's like, it's now when you either go commit or not commit, right?
Yes.
And I said, Jesus, Lord, what she asked me for do? I was like, because she heard the frustration, right? When I come in from work, I'd be very frustrated with how the current situation was in caring for patients and not giving them the optimal things and telling them, well, this is only revenue driven, get as much people in. But what about, I feel like if you are genuine in how you care for people, the revenue comes, right? But the revenue is not your primary focus. The patient is, right? So when I made that leap, I remember I probably saved up maybe like $4,000 from just a side hustle in the business bank account. And I said to myself, Jesus, I have to pay 3-way deposit on this rent. And
that's on the location. So you saw a location.
I found a little one-room suite with a little reception front area. And I remember when I write the check and I went to drop it off, I feel like I'm tired.
Because the money done. You're not
the
sure
money
you're going to get it back.
And I said, what if this don't work out, right? Like, and I say, oh my God, like this is crazy. I have to literally. And I write the check, and I remember when I said, okay, well, I'm gonna need things. I'm gonna need a bed. I'm gonna need supplies. I had a few things already, but like this was the setup. But I said, well, you're not gonna know if you can fly if you don't jump.
All right, so tell us about that first instance where you got that location, you stepped up, because one of the things I liked that you said is that your business coach said, it's time for you now to step out on your own. So it's no longer, and I think we get trapped into, go to school, like we said before, work for someone, and there's something that you're passionate about, but you don't bring it to the forefront. You treat it as, I have to get this 9 to 5 to focus on my passion, but the passion never comes to the front.
Or you get stuck in the planning phase.
I like that.
And analysis paralysis.
I
never
like that.
implement, right?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
So I think a lot of people need to realize that like done is better than perfect, right? So you just have to get started. Like if this is what it is, like how am I gonna segue myself into that? I know I couldn't quit my full-time job right away and just go sit down. So I had to gradually put myself in. So what I did first, as the the clientele started getting busier, and I know I needed to seed capital into my business. I did a travel assignment for like a year. So I worked 100 hours. I wouldn't advise that, but I worked 100 hours for a little over a year for capital because I needed to pay my bills at home, and I needed to also get capital because what the banks say, no, right? You're a new business, we don't know you. But no was not going to be an answer for me. So when I, what I did, when I realized I was growing now and more people were coming, and I was overextended, right? Because you have to also think about self-care and balance. Then I went to my boss at the time, and I said to her, I need to go back per diem. I said, I'll give you 2 days a week, and I got to work my business now because I'm growing. She was very understanding. I did 2 days, and, I'd pick up for them extra whenever I could. But my business continued to grow. And even the 2 days became too much. And I was like, oh, Lord, okay.
Like God was showing a sign that, okay, Shyma, whatever you try to do to go around my purpose for you.
Is to build it and they will come. Right? So, for me, even the days when I didn't have any patients, I would come to the office, I would dress like I had a full schedule, and I'd come to the office, and I would work on protocols. I would work on building up my binders. So I have like a whole bunch of resource binders, right? So there's an infusion binder, there's a binder for monoclonals when we were doing that, there's a binder for, So I would come and I would work, and I remember we had a little cell phone as our phone at the time. And my daughter used to be the receptionist, and the phone would ring, and she would answer, and then she'd say, XYZ on line 1, and we'd crack up, right? Because on the cell phone, right? And so if there was a beep coming in, I couldn't answer sometimes because maybe I'm in the middle of something at a pharmacy or, or whatever. And, but the fact of the matter is I would come from 9 to 5, I would come. And I would set up a lot of stuff because I was like, I wanted to be ready for the days when I had a lot of patients. Start with the end in mind, right? So, we opened in the middle of the pandemic.
This was in what year? 2020?
2020, and that was the month before I went to my then boss, and I said, per diem's no longer working.
So it's like you saw what was coming?
And I said, I'm quitting because now my volume is enough where I can work on marketing and all that stuff, and I can step out. And 2 weeks after that, the state issued a shutdown for COVID. And I said, well, this is going to make a woman out of me, for lack of a better phrase. But
because you no longer have a 9 to 5, you no longer.
And I wasn't going back to ask for my job. I made up my mind that I wasn't going back to ask for the job. And I said, well, if you guys need a liaison in between, that's like fine.
A consultant sort of thing.
So when I opened, nobody was in the building because everybody was on shutdown.
Shut down.
So nobody knew I was here except the people who was already my clients, right? So,
tell us what you started with in terms of offering the services that you offered, and how did COVID change any of that and where you are now?
So we started with weight loss was one of my big things. Started with medical weight loss, and then we had infusion therapy.
What's infusion?
So, IV vitamin therapies that can be targeted, for wellness, prevention, that kind of stuff, energy, immune support. So there are different formulas that I put together depending on each individual and what their main concerns were. And so we started with those. And then COVID hit, and I had to pivot to include telemedicine, and there was getting a lot of COVID care. People who couldn't get in to see their primary care, or their primary care was not available to take care of them during that time frame, I ended up having to do. And so we pivoted to COVID care. So I said, well, what do people need right now? And what are they coming in for, and how can I adjust? And that's when I applied to be the first outpatient monoclonal center outside of the hospital. So
inside of Connecticut?
Inside of Connecticut. We're the only outpatient that was doing those infusions. And so we were busy in all of this time. to Christmas last year with COVID care. Lots and lots of sick people. People came from multiple different places.
Yeah.
People on telemedicine as well. So, and it was all word of mouth marketing.
Yeah.
Take care of one family.
They spread the word and tell somebody else.
Compared to now, where COVID is with us.
Yeah.
Right. It's no longer a pandemic in terms of that sense, but more of an endemic because it's gonna be around. We're doing more of wellness focus treatments, primary prevention in the very sense of the word. So we offer primary care to our patients. We still do medical weight loss. We've since opened a med spa.
Okay.
That does.
And that's at another location.
That does beauty and wellness and all the self-care stuff on the side. So you get your little
take care of the internal and the external at the same
Absolutely. And how you feel about yourself matters, right?
That's true.
So we offer, facials over there. We do weight loss stuff, infusions again.
Yeah.
Little Botox and fillers.
Okay.
Anti-aging stuff.
BBL, that's what it's called.
Liquid BBLs, post-op care.
Yeah.
That's a new genre. We've kind of like niche. We've kind of come into. There was a need, and there wasn't a lot of providers who was taking care of my dolls.
Yes.
We're having surgery, so now we offer those services as well. So a stark contrast to last year.
In terms of the community, what population, like in terms of age, etc., do you cater to men as well?
Yeah, so our patients are actually male and females.
Okay.
And then when I say the ages probably range from like mid-20s.
Okay.
To my oldest patient's 96.
What?
Yeah, we just don't focus on pediatrics.
Yeah.
If they are sick, I'm family medicine, so I'm board certified to care for all of it. But I usually do kids for sick visits, not for primary prevention.
Okay. And I read, I'm trying to get it correctly, board certified family nurse practitioner. Tell us, what does that cover?
So it means I technically can see all age of the lifespan. So from age 0, the babies, if I chose to, up to 100 and whatever, So I cover all the lifespan. And then in terms of practice, we have to be board certified. So you finish school, that's one area of training, and then you have to now demonstrate that you can apply what you've learned. The knowledge base to get board certified there. And then I'm also a certified medical examiner for Department of Transportation. So we do physicals for bus and truck drivers.
Shyma, you are coming from Tower Hill, did you see this? Were you like one of those children who sat and dreamt or stared at the moon or wished on the stars or wrote down something in a book or watch TV, read book and just imagine? What did you imagine as a child?
Nah, that was stress. I was a child who was a little bit stressful. So I think it was more, I was at the point where I couldn't wait to get big and how can I be better? And when I say get big, it's like how can I get older? Right? Like I couldn't wait to become an adult because I was like, I have to figure out how to do certain things.
Or how to break the cycle of poverty and the poverty and so on. One of the other things that I read about you as well is how you give back or you provide mentorship to other nursing students. Could you tell us some more about that?
Yeah, so I precept nursing students.
Explain what that is.
And preceptorship means that they can come to where you work and you teach them, right? You make the next generation better, right? They'll come in, they'll learn hands-on skills, that kind of stuff. I also do like nurse one-on-one consulting and coaching for other nurses and practitioners that want to become entrepreneurs. Right?
Wonderful.
I also taught with my alma mater. I took students to the clinical sites to be their clinical instructors. So I've taught Sacred Heart students in obstetrics, and I've taken University of Connecticut students to medical surgical floors. So I did that for a couple of years as well. So there's just constant showing people that it can be done. Yeah, I spoke at the DNP